Godzilla, and this is the IFLC podcast. Are you guys ready for a real good fucking time?
Yo, my name is Donnie Cates, and I know the brand is I freaking love comics, but I fucking love comics.
I'm Marjorie Liu, and I freaking love comics.
Hello, I'm Chris Claremont, and I freaking love freaking comics. You got a problem with that?
I'm Todd Bernardi, creator of Kukui Project and Disco Thunder Groove Bone, and I freaking love comics.
Comics, movies, TV, video games, anime, your powers combined. I freaking love comics.
Live with Judah and Gerard.
Where'd Godzilla go?
He's right here. He's right here. Just chilling. He wants to be a part of the podcast. So, hey, what's up, guys? I'm Judah. I'm here with Robo. I'm here with Rhi, and you guessed it, it's another episode of the I freaking love comics podcast / YouTube show. Man, we got a good show. We're gonna be talking about Die by Kieron Gillen, which we've all read and we all have some things to say about.
Can I cut in and tell people what it's about?
If you insist. Okay, fine.
I would love. Do it. So, Die is a comic series written by Kieron Gillen, who's one of Judah's favorites, illustrated by Stephanie Hans, lettered by Clayton Cowles. In 1991, 6 teenagers sit down to play a tabletop RPG. They vanish. 2 years later, 5 of them reappear 50 miles away. One of them is missing an arm. They can't seem to talk about what happened to them. They try to resume their normal lives. They get jobs, they get married, they have kids of their own, and then in 2018, the thing that happened to them comes back into their lives. So, I was doing some reading on this. Yeah, good premise, right? Gillen was actually playing Night Witches, which is an intensely serious tabletop RPG about Soviet women air bombers in World War II. And his character basically got decimated. They had a role that meant that kind of playing just goes through your character. So it got a huge laugh when he was playing, but he found it quite upsetting in terms of, like, this is not the ending that I'd hoped for my character. But she was just turned into soup and random bits of kebab meat. So Die is a comic about a tabletop RPG game gone bad, and it owes a lot to experiences like that one. So he's actually been quoted as saying one of the interesting things about RPGs is when control is taken away from the room. The idea that it isn't just you and it isn't just anyone in the room, there's a friction there, and a lot of pen and paper RPGs exist on that friction, so I liked that idea. So one of the other interesting things about Kieron is that he used to be a games journalist. So he has actually written, I don't know if you guys knew that about him, he's written for like PC Gamer UK, The Escapist, Rock Paper Shotgun Online, a games reviewer for Eurogamer. So people remember him for this manifesto that he put out, which is called New Games Journalism. And he essentially pitched the idea that instead of games journalists talking about whether you should buy something or shouldn't buy something, they should almost be like travel guides for imaginary landscapes. So it kind of changed the whole landscape of games journalism, that manifesto. So he has also gone on record saying that his favorite die is a D20. And on the cover of the volume 1 and some of the covers of the issues inside, this guy right here is an unfolded D20.
Oh shit! So that's what that is. Yeah,
that's pretty dope.
I know,
That's
right?
It's like so you could actually cut that out, fold it into your own little D20 if you wanted to.
Correct. Yeah, you could. I'm sure people have done that already.
Yeah, probably, right?
But Stephanie Hans, she's worked for Marvel. If you go look her up, she's done tons and tons and tons of Marvel stuff, hundreds of Marvel things. But at the moment, she's participating in something that Judah mentioned in our live stream last week, which is that Creators for Comics Twitter auction, and that benefits the Book Industry Charitable Foundation, or BINC.
So over 130 comics writers, artists, authors, they are coming together to provide financial help to comic book retailers and independent bookstores hit hard by COVID-19.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love
cool,
seeing
right?
people step up like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and she said, I do not usually sell my originals. So what she's selling is like a 2010 illustration of Amora for the Women of Marvel book. And she was doing 2 versions of it, so she's got a digital and a traditional up for auction. If anyone's got $600 or more to spend on that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure. I
Yeah,
just
for
have
sure.
just have to sell my Godzilla.
Yeah.
That's it.
For $600, clearly. Yeah.
That's it. So Gillen has also said, he says, my joke now in interviews is that Dai is Lord of the Rings told solely through conversation in restrooms. But he references The Wizard of Oz, Alice in Wonderland, even 13 going on 30. So the idea is young people experimenting with being older people. That's kind of what all those movies are about.
Yeah.
Conversely, Dai is a book about adults who are regretting their entire life and realizing it's too late. It's not 13 going on 30, it's 40 going on dead.
Yeah.
Ooh,
So
that's
he
good.
said,
Yeah. Damn.
Sweet,
That
sweet pitch.
that hits home. I
he's,
Yeah.
Right?
I need to go.
so he said, Dai,
Yeah. It's a personal attack.
it hurts on the inside.
Yeah.
So he said,
Jesus Christ.
Dai is a logical, yeah, so true. He's also said Dai is a logical collision between 1980s Dungeons and Dragons cartoon and Stephen King's It, or a goth Jumanji, if I'm being shorter.
Goth Jumanji. The whole idea of the mashup deal, like, that's what I love about this whole book. Like when you guys said, so you pitched this last week and were like, hey, let's read this book, let's talk about it, it's dope. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. I watch it. I mean, I read it, and I'm a big video game nerd. My family, and when I was little,
Nerd.
yeah,
Okay.
for sure. The comic book expert screams. So I'm like, I grew up little. Yeah, I grew up as a little kid playing board games, and then eventually got into video games. All my uncle, my whole family. If I were to go have a family reunion, we'd have a day where we spent like 12 hours playing video games. So out comes Jumanji, and it's like, oh man, how cool would that be, right? So as I go through video games, and I said this last time where I was talking about my affinity towards like high fantasy kind of RPGs and Dragon Age and ESO and all that stuff, Elder Scrolls. I read this book and it's like, okay, how about this? How about mash up those high fantasy video games, D&D, and comic books? Like, holy shit. Like, and so I'm reading this and they're talking about D6s, D8s, D20s. We're talking about the healer, the dictator, where they're not talking specifically about classes that are typical in RPGs, but that's what they are, right? So you got the jock, and which leads me into the other kind of like trope that they use, is where you have like this YA kind of, like, you know how like on Scream, right? You had the jock, you had the emo girl, you had the popular girl, you had
The Breakfast Club. The Breakfast Club.
Yeah, the Breakfast Club. Yeah. Exactly right. And so not only do you have your typical gaming classes, but you had your cinema, your literature kind of classes, if you will.
Archetypes.
Yeah, and I just I love it. I love it. Another thing I love about it is is how further they go in those characters, where it's not just the emo chick. It's the woman who lost her freaking arm in an event that happened however many years ago. You know, and then she's dealing with this disability, and then that comes back in, and it comes back, and she has to decide, like, you know, this is what it's like to have two arms. They even kind of dabble. Maybe I'm off here. I'm not sure, but I feel like they kind of dabble in like trans experimentation, exploration type stuff with Dominic. Definitely. Who's clearly a good looking dude. They don't really talk about any of the character's sexual orientation or anything like that, or their preferred pronouns outside of what, you know, Kieron has actually written down in talk bubbles. But I feel like there's a little bit there because Dominic is a good looking dude, comes in, and I thought I was like, because of the art, I'm like, I wasn't looking at it right, and then a couple panels, he's a hot like like magician, enchantress kind of, you know, deal. And they don't really talk about it. It's just like, nope, this is me now.
That's
Yeah,
a lot-
It's seamless, which I like. I like
Yeah.
the seamless nature of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
do that a lot throughout the story. I found they leave a lot unsaid, which is really good for people with active imaginations like us three, because
Yes.
anything we come up with inside our own head is going to be much scarier than anything anyone could write.
It-
So
Like a D&D
it's the-
game.
It follows the
Yeah.
like the first rule of fiction is show me, don't tell me, and I like that about it.
Love
Exactly.
it.
Yeah.
Love it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, the thing that knocked me in the face about this, like I like the story, but I love the art. Stephanie Hans, if I see her name on a book, I'm buying it. That's just
yeah.
that's Judah life rule number 5,621 now, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
But
She's in the same
yes.
club as Esad Rivik and Ryan Stegman.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. Ryan
That's
Stegman,
dope.
Rivik, Clayton Crane, and Stephanie Hans. Man, I
That's
love her
dope,
work.
yeah.
I don't know how I haven't really looked into the rest of her work. This is my introduction to her, but the thing that I love about this is how the colors. I'm gonna sound kind of like a hippie who just did some psychedelic mushrooms right now, but the way the colors jumped out of the page into my face was exquisite. I've never seen this technique used so effectively. What you have is a very gray tone, almost gray tone backdrop for the story. It's dismal, it's dark, but when you see red or blue or white, it immediately guides your eye to that part of the page, and the framing and the art and the colors really guides your experience. So it really blew me away. There's one group shot
I was
where
saying to you before, yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but like it's very watercolor in feel, almost like a fairy tale. So it kind of adds to that fantasy.
Fantasy,
Yeah.
yeah, I love
Very
it.
smooth.
the surreal but still discernible nature of the fantasy.
Yeah.
The
Yeah, for sure.
watercolors brings that out hardcore. But there's like a group shot where they're all standing there and they just look like you can see right just looking at them like the glowing reds, and it's like powerful and epic. I hate to abuse the word epic, but it really is epic.
It is.
Yeah. Thematically, the other thing I loved about this was, there's all these archetypical characters, but then there's Soul, who in the beginning of the story, all these 6 characters get lost in a game. They go in, they start playing D&D, and then you see the mom walk in, they're gone, and then it's like 2 years later, they just appear in the street. One of them's missing an arm, and one of them is just missing. And the one that's missing, you find out later, 25 years later, you find out the one that's missing.
Spoiler
missing
alert.
Spoiler alert. I don't know. Is this a bad one, or should I just keep this one to myself?
Nah, I mean it's like on page 4 of the whole thing, so I don't think that's a big plot twist.
Soul never left, and Soul is the game master. He's the god of this world.
Yeah.
And he just decided that I'm good. I like it here. This is me now. And it's it's funny because they all go back to retrieve him. That's why they're going back. And he's down with being there. This is his place.
Yeah.
It highlights this theme. This is his realm, exactly. He's the master of his own realm.
Yeah.
Which is isn't that what we all want to be? The master of our own realm. Like
Absolutely.
the theme here is that which
too much
reality
pressure.
matters. Say what?
I said no. That's too much pressure. No, just got it.
No. I would like to be the slave of my own reality. No, I got you. The theme here is very much reality and what reality is, the nature of reality. You have characters, even the characters that go back are so conflicted once they really get a taste. You have like the jock kind of D-bag character who once he's there for a while, he's like, you know what? I like it here. I'm banging all these elves and getting wasted, and I'm a warrior hero, so I love it here. And then you got the other character who's like, well, I miss my kids and my family, and that's like my chosen main reality. You know what I mean? And it's just interesting the different perspectives on
The first dude is Cypher from the Matrix, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, F it, I want to go back. The steak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. The steak. The lady in the red dress.
Yeah.
As I chew on the steak, I know that the Matrix is telling my brain that it's chewy and delicious, and I'm totally okay with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it. And I'm glad you brought up the Matrix because that really I feel like this revisits a lot of those concepts. The idea that if you live in a place and it's real to you and you're happy there, is that enough? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Or
I
do you want to be Neo hooked up to the machines being used as a battery?
Sure.
So you
Yeah.
reality, you know? So
For sure. Look, I'm going to ask you guys if you would recommend it, but first I have a quote from the man himself, Kieron Gillen, which talks to what you were just talking about. So he's saying, where did the urge come from? The evening after I had the core idea, I had a moment when I realized why it got stuck in my head. I was wondering whether part of me has been trapped in a fantasy world and never got out, at which point I burst into tears, which is always a tell you're onto something worth writing about. How is my obsessive love of this hurt me and all the people around me? What was the cost of all this stuff you truly love? Hell, why did you love it? So it's very interesting thematically. Would you recommend it? That's my question.
Yes. Yeah.
That's an avid yes.
Yeah.
Damn straight.
yeah, I definitely recommend it. Do I recommend it to everyone? I don't know. I definitely recommend
What
it.
kind of person do you think would enjoy it the most?
If you loved the Never-Ending Story and you loved Jumanji and you love it, I think you're gonna love this.
Nice. It is very dark at times, yeah.
Yes.
So speaking of recommendations or recommendations, right? So we all gave 3 yeses, right? You were talking
there.
about
See
yeah, I see what you did there. Did you guys want to talk a little bit about Umbrella Academy?
Oh, hell yes. Okay, I have a confession to start with. When 13-year-old Rhiannon was a very, let's call her an emo kid. So the 2 albums that I listened to...
You don't say.
I know, right? It doesn't come across. So my fucking grey and black and white Batman shirt and all that.
Brush the hair. Put the hair over that
That's
eye.
it.
Come on.
Just
That's
all
it.
the way over, just like right here.
Yeah, there's all this shit.
Yeah.
So the 2 albums I had on repeat constantly as a teenager were BYOB from System of a Down and 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge by My Chemical Romance. Sorry. So that you can see why I was attracted to Umbrella Academy. The lead singer of My Chem wrote these comics. So he's written about this. It's described as a dysfunctional family of superheroes, right? There's this day in the mid-20th century when 43 infants are inexplicably born to a random, unconnected women who showed no signs of pregnancy. It is hinted by a character implied to be God that they're collectively a modern-day incarnation of the Messiah. But this guy, so Reginald Hargreaves, in the comics, he's a extraterrestrial dressed up. In the show, it's a bit more ambiguous, but we'll talk about that. He is a famous entrepreneur. He adopts the surviving 7 children, and he prepares them to save the world from an unspecified threat as this team called the Umbrella Academy. So that's the beginning of this weird... It is one of the weirdest comic series I've ever read, I'll be honest. It's really strange.
Yeah.
So I can see why they did a lot of changes that they did for the show, because it just would not translate. Like, the first issue, they have a fight with the Eiffel Tower. So you can imagine...
which now makes...
I'll be honest, I would have liked to see that.
Yeah.
But it makes all the Eiffel
not-
Tower images in the show, because, well, spoiler alert, I haven't read the comics. I'm ashamed.
I haven't
I'm
read the
ashamed.
comic either.
But there are
But,
many images in the
were-
show of the Eiffel Tower, so, yeah.
Yeah,
I'd
yeah. It's
like to see
interesting.
that fight.
Oh yeah, it's definitely like reading the comic. It's you can tell it's a comic made by a man that loves reading comics. Like
Yeah.
it's got in the collected volumes. I think there's like Jeff Lemire, or however you say his name, has done an intro. Warren Ellis has said it's an excellent series. They've had accolades from all kinds of greats that are really into it. But what's interesting about it for me is that Gabriel, the artist, so he's a twin brother of another comic book artist called Fabio Moon. And the first time I read them together was they did this book called Day Tripper, which is really awesome. I would super recommend it. I think it's a Vertigo published title. But he is very similar in his art style to, is it Mike Mignola, the guy that does Hellboy?
Yes, that is Mike Mignola.
Yeah, so it's very like dark, thick lines, bold colors, yeah, kind of like overlapping frames, that kind of stuff. It's very, very reminiscent of that style. So I really enjoy the art style, but it's also very, for lack of a better word, like it's kind of like you're at a rock concert, it feels like, is how it's drawn. Like that comes through in the storytelling, it comes through in the pacing of the comic. It kind of feels like you're reading a song at times. So that's really cool. I think that's how they kind of met up together, is Gabriel was really into rock music, and then he met up with Gerard Way, and they sort of like bonded over the rock music thing before they started working together creatively on this comic. So it's a cool blend of music and comics, I suppose, like we were talking about before with Die, where it's a blend of games and comics. This one's a blend of music and comics. But show, which I know, Robo, you've seen all of it. Judah, you've seen a few episodes, is that right?
Just a couple, just the first two, and then I bailed.
Yeah, that's the main thing for me is the show is I don't know why I didn't go into comics. I have this stack of ridiculously high to read comics, and I think I just have too many hobbies. Like I try to get Aaron to like jump on a PS4, plug his VR back in, and his one true love is comics. I'm like, and for me, I'm like, I'm so torn.
All over the
PS4.
Right.
So I haven't actually read it, but I love the show, and really everything about it. It's just like, and like you said, it's like very the music and even their episodes are named after tracks of music that they're gonna play in it. So that same kind of like music mashup that you've communicated about the comic. It's cool hearing you say that, having not read it, because I can see the same thing they did. They translated that well into the show.
They even have 2 dance sequences in the TV series.
Yeah.
I haven't even had that till just now. But the comics are very, very different from the show in terms, like, so the themes are kind of the same.
Mm-hmm.
The character arcs are kind of generally the same, but they've, like Hazel and Cha-Cha, right? They're like the main bad guys or villains or antagonists, I guess you'd say, of both of those.
Mm-hmm.
In the comics, they are sadistic. They cut off people's limbs. They laugh about it. Yeah, there's no humanity to them at all in the comics, whereas in the show,
if you cut off someone's limb and you laugh about it, you're 100% a bad person.
So in the show, it's a lot more ethically gray, because the all they're trying to do is keep the timeline intact, and anybody trying to jump around the time to mess it up, even if it'd be like, I don't know, like what's a good example might be like the Watcher or the Living Tribunal. Like if things get out of whack too much, then the cosmic forces will step in. So this organization is just to keep the timeline intact. And I didn't. Yeah, you don't like them. But they didn't come off as evil. So you're saying in the comics, like this organization is clearly evil.
Oh, yeah. So number 5 is pretty much the same. So he's a bit of a weird case, watching the spoilers for anyone that hasn't seen it. It's been out for a while now, so you should watch it.
Yeah, no excuse.
But number 5, he's like an assassin that has been sent through time. He's like assassinated Kennedy and all kinds of shit. So that's the same as in the comics as well. He's very, very similar.
But in the show, he doesn't assassinate him. But in the comics, he does.
Yeah. Well, it's a bit. In the show, he talks about how he's killed innocent people, or he's like done missions for that same conglomerate that's trying to like control time and the flow of whatever. But he's basically the exact same character. The biggest departure in the comics, I think, was Hazel and Cha-Cha and Vanya. So Ellen Page's character. She in the comics is like, she kind of just betrays her family on a whim, and she gets picked up by this evil guy that's making this like apocalypse orchestra, and he experiments on her, kind of like what's Gamora's sister named Nebula, when she gets like pieced apart by Thanos and she's like in that stasis thing. They kind of do that with her and turn her into that white violin character that she becomes.
Okay.
But in the show, it's her arc is like completely different. She's much more sympathetic. Everyone is much more fleshed out, but they also keep a lot of the controversial topics that Gerard wrote about in the book. So like, there's like a bit of arguable incest in there. There's the whole like number 5. Lovely. Number 5 being trapped as a 68-year-old in like a child's body is one of the things as well. So there's some weird, and obviously like Klaus's drug addiction, he's had that relationship with that guy in Vietnam. When he travels back in time, there's a lot of time travel stuff. So
they did that really well, by the way. Like they didn't do like multiple episodes on that, But when Klaus, spoiler, when Klaus, had that dude that he fell in love with die, and then how that affected him. I remember watching that, I was just like, ugh, like, oh man, that's fucking sad.
So Judah, if you don't know, Klaus is the one that can speak to the dead. So he's
okay. I remember
what
Klaus.
What brings them all together in the beginning is their dad's funeral, and they all kind of agree that he's an ass. But he can't conjure his dad. So you have some other conversations. One of them's dead. Ben, one of their brothers, is dead. So he's constantly around Klaus, like giving him advice and keep him sober and stuff.
So he can't conjure the dead. Is that a thing that becomes a twist later on? Does that lead to a twist? Is there like?
I think his sobriety opens up more powers for him.
That's it. He turned to drugs because his powers scared him, and his drugs kind of like dampen his powers.
And I remember how he was portrayed on the show, and he's very like almost looks like seems like a washed up rock star in some ways.
That's right. Yeah.
The guy that played
more
him,
music.
That's it. Anyone that's seen Misfits, and it's an amazing show about juveniles in the UK that get superpowers from a lightning storm. It's really awesome. I think it's on Netflix or Stan or one of those. But the main guy from the first 2 seasons of that plays Klaus, and he's just got this like likable kind of like drifter, happy-go-lucky kind of addict.
Man, there's an English dude that kind of reminds me of
like a
comedian.
He's got like a Mick Jagger vibe.
Yeah.
Like before all 7 of his lifetimes happened. Like,
I can't believe he's 273 years old. I still can't believe it. It's crazy.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's on his 9th body and he's already like trashed it. But
yeah. But he'll get a new one anyway. But it's funny you were talking about. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh,
I was going to say, what did you think of the show? Yeah.
Yeah. No. So. It's funny that the way you're describing things in the Ellen Page number 7, right? This has happened to me more than once, and I know that there are going to be people who read the book first and then watch the show, and I totally understand the idea of reading something, liking it. Now let's look at the adaptation of it, right? And if it fails, if it doesn't match your imagination, then you won't care for it, and I think that is completely understandable. I've done it many times with literature, but that I've read. But if you're watching the show for the first time, then it's in your mind. It doesn't become an adaptation. In your mind, it's just the story, and the book, although it was written first, becomes the adaptation. You read the book and go, I wonder how it translates. And when Garth Ennis wrote The Boys, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You were talking about character arc with Ellen Page. I felt the same way with Star, and we're not doing a show on The Boys, but the Star girl, the Christian, right? In the show, you are on her side. You feel for her, and the sexual assault, and then why she doesn't tell the crowd, why she doesn't out them to the media, is a really like, you're gonna look like a piece of shit. The girls are gonna look at you. Oh, look at this damage you're doing right now. Like, is that the example you want to give? And so she's like crying. And in the comic book, it's because she doesn't want to lose her fucking spot on the team. And I'm gonna tell you, I kind of stopped reading the comic book around there. Just kind of like the characters being fleshed out didn't happen. So now that you've said that, I'm afraid of how the book goes, because Ellen Page, you're right. It is that abandoned child, like the ugly stepchild kind of deal, that Cinderella aspect of it. And if they don't kind of build on that in the books, I'm gonna be disappointed. I'm gonna read it anyway. But Ellen Page really just kind of. I will be, yeah.
The characters are a lot. Yeah, they're a lot thinner in the comic than they are in the show. I'll give you that.
So disappointing.
They're definitely more fleshed out.
But yeah, I really like Ellen Page's character in the deal. I really like Ellen Page as an actress in general.
She was in that movie Hard Candy that was awesome.
Yes. Love that movie.
Yeah, she's always this very unassuming kind of role, and then kind of just flips it on you, like, oh, you think I'm this innocent, plain Jane kind of deal, and there's always some twist. And no matter how many roles you see Ellen Page play that role, it still twists every time. She's so good. And I know that
she really is.
I know she wasn't in The Last of Us. I know that wasn't her.
But she might as well have been, though, right?
Yeah. apparently, she attempted to. I don't know what happened with the lawsuit on that, but even like
I don't know.
you
if
can,
she's successful.
Should not dog over it, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
you can tell that they were going for that kind of character. So even though it's not her, it's still that kind of character. And so what you have with number 7 is that background, feel bad for her, and then you find out she's a bad bitch that can destroy the entire world, and it's like so awesome.
It's pretty bad.
That's a huge spoiler. Maybe we shouldn't have said that, but oh well.
Oof.
Fuck it.
Oof.
Fuck it.
No.
That's the whole
I
season
think-
1. So
Yeah, that's actually the biggest departure from the comics. Is like in the first volume, which is Apocalypse Suite, which has volumes 1 to 6. Issues 1 to 6. They have that same scenario where like the moon crumbles. Sorry, Judah, spoilers, and like is crashing down to Earth, and Seance is like Klaus is way more overpowered in the comics. Like he can float and he can like levitate shit. So he just like stops the moon rock from landing and the whole apocalypse is averted. But in the show, the world fucking explodes.
yeah, no, it's the end of the world. Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
I'm gonna have myself a real good time. I feel alive. And the world, I'm turning inside out. Yeah. I'm floating around in ecstasy. So don't stop me now. Don't stop me, 'cause I'm having a good time, having a good time. I'm a shooting star leaping through the sky like a tiger, defying the laws of gravity. I'm a racing car passing by like Lady Godiva. I'm gonna go, go, go. There's no stopping me. I'm burning through the sky, yeah. 200 degrees, just why they call me Mr. Fahrenheit. I'm traveling at the speed of light. I wanna make a supersonic man out of you. Don't stop me now. I'm having such a good time. I'm having a ball.
So, man, okay, fuck it. Spoilers. Let me ask you a question real quick. In the comics, do they turn into kids and go back in time? Because that's what happened. That's the season finale.
Yep.
Don't even watch the show.
They do
Why
sort
would
of-
you watch the show after watching this?
Now I don't need to watch it.
Yeah.
They do time travel, but it's done differently. So they have like the fights and stuff are a bit different. The main bad guys are a bit different. The mother that's a robot that they have is not at all fleshed out in the comics, and she plays quite a significant role in the show.
Mhm.
So I do
Is
think they've done
Pogo
a
there?
good job
The
of
monkey
like,
butler?
yeah. Well, they actually have in the comics. They have this like, it's kind of a bit racist, I feel, but like they've got this like Indian butler guy that has no lines. And he's just always there, and he's got like a turban on, and he's like hanging around. Yeah,
and
but
they
he's
went
not
with the
in-
experimental chimpanzee butler. I like the experimental chimpanzee better.
Yeah, that's it. Well, Pogo is still in the comic, but yeah, he's in
Oh,
the
I
show
see.
as well, and he was done so well, wasn't he? I thought he looked really
yeah.
good.
Oh yeah, it was great.
Yeah,
What are you gonna ask, Judah?
but budget, great.
So question about the comics. What's the Eiffel Tower's primary method of attack?
It's sort of like gets possessed by this guy inside it. That's a ghost. It's
Does
really
it,
like when I
does it
see the
develop? I
comics,
picture the Eiffel
Yeah.
Tower develop tentacles and lashing out like a giant Eiffel Tower.
Way cooler than mine because I picture like googly eyes, the stickers that you put on things, and it's this giant Eiffel Tower with these woo, kind of thing.
Oh my God, I love that. It's funny you say that because one of the brothers, that's his actual power, the one that dies, Ben,
Yeah.
he like sort of opens
Yes,
this
yeah.
hell vortex in his
Yes.
gut, and these tentacles come out, and that's how he like fights.
He opens
people.
a,
So there
he
is,
opens a portal to another
Godzilla's
dimension,
like-
and this monster comes out. Yeah, that's dope.
that's it. Yeah.
I've met the Eiffel Tower and he ain't shit.
It's kind of. I'll have to show you some art. We'll put some art over the top of this with the Eiffel
Yeah.
Tower fight. But the way they've done it, it makes sense because the world in the comics is like it has aliens constantly. It's
Yes.
got like these are just normal things. It's not grounded in reality like the TV show is, where it's like a bit more like what we live in now. In the comics, it's just like there are fucking aliens everywhere, and there are like Eiffel Towers that come to life and shit, and it's just normal everyday fare.
And
But the show
since
is
we're
not
not,
like that at all.
since we're
I
not,
like the genre.
since we're not giving a shit about spoilers, you touched on it earlier, but that's in all of season 1, you still don't know that Dad is an alien. In the comics, comics that is already the comics already does that in the first volume.
Well, in his intro on like page 1.
Oh,
they say, like,
so the show makes it a
alien,
secret.
but-
It's gonna be an out later, but I see.
Yeah. So in the show, they kind of like Judah allude to it by they have this flashback to Reginald when he's on presumably some other planet, and there's like rocket ships taking off, and he's sitting there talking to this like really sick woman that he's obviously in love with, and she's like, "Take my violin and give it to someone that will love it," and he's like, "Okay," and then he hops on this like Victorian era type ship, and he buys this umbrella business, and it's really strangely done in the show. It's like I don't know if they're kind of trying to show that he's an alien or kind of trying to show that he's time traveled from somewhere. What do you think, Robo?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the book he's an alien. In the book he's an alien. I think that they're trying to be like slick about it, and then that's the big surprise in season 2. Like I think I really do like the way that that shows do like their deal where they know their audience is different. Like their audience is not to please like the comic books readers. Like, look at all these comic book readers. Whoever read this, I'm gonna make a show for them. They're making a show for my dad. Like my mom and dad watched Umbrella Academy and go, "Wow, that was fun." And if they made it exactly like the comic books and have a anthropomorphic or monsterized Eiffel Tower, my dad would have turned it off immediately.
Which I'm still very intrigued by the way.
Yeah, we'll put images up.
That
They're
resonates.
two very separate pieces. So why did you drop off, Judah? Why did you not enjoy it?
So, it wasn't the worst thing I'd ever seen. It didn't draw me in. I thought the pacing really threw me off. I thought it was clunky. The way scenes, what I mean by clunky is that you had scenes that just kind of happened and they seemingly out of nowhere and then resolved again seemingly out of nowhere. What comes to mind is the other sister shows up, or is it the brother? I really can't remember. Shows up, has the lightning power. They have this fight on the lawn with all the lightning, and then it's like that happens, and then it unhappens, and we're back. I kept getting distracted by that, and I didn't personally connect with any of the characters. And the last thing is big shoulder dude with a little head. I couldn't take it seriously. It was very comical to me, and I know he was a character I was supposed to take seriously.
I will tell you this one thing. I felt the same way too. I remember thinking a lot of the first part of the season, I was like, what is that dude? He takes off his shirt later in a fight scene.
Is he just freaking jacked?
Well, I'll just tell you right now, he's part gorilla. He was gonna die, and the way that his dad saved him was to splice his DNA with gorilla, and he looks ridiculous with his giant jacket thing. He's gonna fight. He takes off his thing, and it's like, and it's like, oh, that's badass. Oh, that's dope. It's fucking dope.
Pretty rad.
So I will give this show another chance, mostly because you guys are very enthusiastic about it, and that enthusiasm is very contagious. So I'm excited to check it out now, and spoilers, schmoilers, I don't care. I'm gonna enjoy. I'm gonna do my best to enjoy it, and it seems like it's a good show. I'm definitely gonna read the comic. Sounds really interesting to me.
Recommend the comic to everyone if I'm completely honest. Like it's very weird. It's very weird. If you like Gerard Way and his stuff, go for it. If you like Gabriel Barr and his stuff, go for it. If not, maybe it's not for you.
So let me ask you this. There's this genre, and it's a genre that emerged, I think it started with Watchmen, and it's the almost satirical critique of superhero genre. And it includes titles like The Boys and Irredeemable and The Watchmen, and there's others. There's Kick-Ass, and then you have this. Where would you say this ranks in that superhero but superhero genre?
Yeah, it's like a cross between all of those and Hellboy. Like, it's very tongue-in-cheek and doesn't take itself seriously. It's got supernatural elements, obviously, all throughout the comic series. So,
Would you say it's one of the better ones?
yeah, I really enjoyed it for what it's worth. I'm not saying I wouldn't recommend it to everyone just because it's bad. It's just
you're talking about the
very
comic
different.
specifically, right?
Yeah, like the show is pretty. You can watch it with your parents, like Robo said. Like most people will probably enjoy it. It's got a pretty standard narrative, but the comics are super weird. If you like super weird shit, if you like Hellboy, you might like this.
I do like Hellboy, so sweet. Can't wait.
All right, let's hit it up. Judah, recommend the show that you haven't seen.
I can't recommend it, but I recommend it to myself right now that I'll check it out. How about that?
Yeah.
Is that a nice
If you do, let us
way to
know.
weasel out of that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'd love to know what you think. What about you, Robo? Would you recommend it, the show?
Absolutely. I'm a dork for superpower stuff. It's kind of hard for me to not like it. And I love twists and turns and all the things that we ruined in this show. I love those things. So yeah.
It's pretty fun. Yep.
All right.
Cool.
So I guess
Can we tell people about our live stream this weekend?
Yeah, we're gonna.
What a wonderful thing to bring up.
We'll do a couple different announcements. We actually have a lot of stuff to bring up. So this weekend, whatever date that is. So what is that? 15, 16, 17, 18. So in the U.S., that's the 18th. I think by the time we get all the way to Australia, it's the morning of the 19th. We are doing a live stream event. Not exactly sure what we're going to talk about, but it's always a good time. We please come in to the chat, and we're very interactive because we usually run out of things to say pretty quickly. So you guys drive that conversation. We do start off with some news, so we'll talk about what's new in media, obviously focused on comic books. We also have a couple new shows that we're working right now.
So coming down the pipeline without unconfirmed, but we are in talks to potentially have some pretty awesome guests.
Yes.
Some of them you may even have heard of. So stay tuned for that.
Yes.
Also, do you guys like stuff? I like stuff.
I like stuff.
I'm a huge fan of stuff. We have our trademark, awesome, official IFLC bookmarks. They're on order, they're metal, and they're pretty dope looking. They have soul flare.
And they'll be on your screen right here.
There's soul flare, and it's got our Starburst logo, and they're awesome. And then that way you don't have to do what I do, which is blah blah blah. I'm reading. I gotta go do some grown-up stuff. I guess I'll just put my water bottle in here.
Yes. Oh my God, the water bottle bookmark. I fucking hate having to use my water bottles.
Finally, those days are behind you. So that's pretty good news. I think it's good news.
We could also be like, do you hate finding your spot in a book? And then
there's a Teespring that we're going to open soon, and it's got T-shirts with our logo on them and with soul flare on them, and not just T-shirts. There's hoodies, with the trademark IFLC butt plug, like whatever you want. We got it. You're gonna love it. It's awesome. Robo just gave me the death stare. This might get cut.
Hey Reed, you want to give a little bit a little teaser on the next 2 episodes I know you're working on?
Absolutely. So one of the moderators and I are teaming up tomorrow to record an episode on LGBT plus representation in comics, which I'm super excited about. We have a lot to talk about there. So we'll be talking about the big 2 and some indie titles, good and bad examples. So if you want to know more about that, definitely check us out. I'm not sure when it'll be up, but we're hoping sometime next week. And then I've also got one in the pipeline for sex positivity, kink, and polyamory in comics. Because those are things that I'm all interested in personally and what I've read a lot about in comics. So I have a lot of examples to show people. That's it.
So great segue. So like those, especially that last one that Reed just brought up, can't really put stuff like that on YouTube without having to talk around a lot of stuff and show you some of the coolest images that they're gonna bring up comics and there's a lot of images from those comics that we'll want to put up. Shut up, Judah. And and we can't put it on Facebook, especially because we'll get zucked to all hell. Yeah. So head over to patreon.com/IFreakinLoveComics. Unfortunately, we're gonna put it up there, and for one time, or if you want to hit us up regularly, you can subscribe. $3 is all we'll ask, and then you'll get the sex positivity, polyamory, and kink episode. I don't think $3 is. I can't even. I'm in Hawaii. You can't even get a cheeseburger for $3. So.
Yeah.
There you go.
I would
It's
pay.
nothing. It's
I would pay
a
$3.
pittance. All right, guys.
Take it
Yeah,
easy. Don't
thanks.
forget to like and subscribe. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all that shit.
DM us. Be our friend. Tell all your friends about us. Get our logo tattooed on your chest.
Woo!
Bye.